Earlier this year, the Department of Justice, led by Al Gonzalez, launched Project Safe Childhood to help federal, state, and local enforcement officials investigate and prosecute crimes against children that are facilitated by the internet and other electronic communications.
The most basic and most important role of any civilized society is to protect its children. It is a challenge that never ends. After all, there are so many dangers that we must protect our kids from. Injury and illness, drugs and gangs. The list is frightening and it is long. One threat haunts us more than all the others, the threat of sexual predators. Their crimes against children are irreversible. Their pain lasts a lifetime because it steals the gift of innocence. At times, it seems as if we cannot stay ahead of the threats against our kids. And there is a cruel irony in the fact that society's technological advancements have provided those who seek to hurt our children with new opportunities. Every day, children are sexually solicited online. Every day, thousands of individuals obtain, distribute, and produce child pornography over the internet.
When the Attorney General launched Project Safe Childhood, he had two things in mind. The first thing was to make sure that we can teach our children and our parents about how to protect them and keep them safe from online sexual exploitation. The second thing is to make sure that we're supporting law enforcement, prosecutors, individuals that are on the other side of the criminal justice system to make sure these predators are brought to justice, that there are investigations done for cyber crimes, and that we use the entire force of the criminal justice system to protect our children.
You get these cases and they say it's just a picture, it's just an image. And you have to educate judges, you have to educate the public that it's not just a picture, but it's a kid being abused. And every time that image is portrayed, every time that image is published, it's a continuing abuse of that child.
There is a misconception as to what child pornography is. These are not just pictures. These are not baby in the bathtub types of photos. These images actually represent the graphic sexual assault of children. In just the last 8 years of reviewing the child pornography for the Cyber Tip Line and the CVIP program, we've seen the age of the child victims dramatically drop. At this point, 6% of the children that we know are identified are actually infants, and a full 58% otherwise are children who are still prepubescent.
We're seeing escalating levels of violence. We're seeing more egregious forms of abuse. It's almost like it takes more to get people excited than it did a year ago. Individuals who sexually exploit children are very often in positions of trust in that child's life. We've arrested, unfortunately, lots of cops. We've arrested lots of teachers, lots of clergy, Boy Scouts. There's no profile per se for persons who do this type of work. And nothing I've seen in 20 years of law enforcement compares to the things that I've seen since I've been in this chair. An example is a little baby, probably about 8, 9 months old, being penetrated by an adult male in video with sound, and the male's narrating what he's doing to this child and talking about how he likes the feel of the child squirming in his hand, and he likes how the child screams in pain and that sort of stuff. That is unimaginable horror for the kid, unimaginable that anybody in their mind would ever think to do something like that.
This just isn't a picture. It's a crime scene with the child being abused. Even in some of these images, you can see them crying, tears in their eyes as they're being abused.
You're seeing pretty harsh stuff. You see some very hard material. We tracked an individual that was trafficking in child sexual abuse images, and we saw a very high volume. I ended up reaching out to San Diego and working with them to getting the information so that they would work this case. They ended up arresting an individual who was working as a respiratory therapist in Children's Hospital there. When they started investigating, they found that this guy had been molesting 1, 2, 3 kids a week. He'd been there for 10 years. He was molesting kids that were coming out of surgery, that were there for hospice care, children that couldn't ask for help. And there were a lot of kids involved. When they asked him about it, he was looking out the window at the weather, and it was snowing where he was. They asked him how many kids he had molested, and he said, "How many snowflakes are there?" The ICAC task forces are a group of state and local law enforcement agencies that are brought together, supervised and funded by DOJ Office of Justice programs to do investigations of child exploitation on the Internet. The ICAC data network is a series of servers located in Wyoming that are accessible to investigators throughout the United States. One of the big advantages that comes from being able to do this is we can actually make it possible for investigators to not have to look at these videos over and over and over again. The images that we see that depict 2-year-olds being violently raped are not only are they destructive to everyone involved, but they can tear down these officers that are working these investigations.
There are about 37 innocent images task forces across the country. In almost all of those task forces, there are state and local representation on those task forces. So if you overlay the ICAC map of where their task forces are with the FBI map, the country's pretty well blanketed in terms of online presence, covert presence working these matters. Obviously, we do our enticement cases every day. I mean, there are agents online in this country every single day that are posing as kids, and in a matter of minutes you'll have 4 or 5 guys asking you, how old are you a virgin, what's your bra size, do you have pubic hair. You'll see very aggressive solicitation, or you'll see a grooming process that could last over several weeks, where the person slowly introduces sex into the conversation.
The Internet connectivity has allowed it to be either a federal crime or a state crime, and it could be prosecuted either way.
California, until extremely recently, has had a very weak law on possession